So hopefully everyone can see our slides.
Looks good.
Yep. Great, thanks.
Okay, we generally like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So I'll begin. The La Trobe University proudly acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands where its campuses are located in Victoria. We recognise that Indigenous Australians have an ongoing connection to the land, and the university values their unique contribution both to the university and the wider Australian society. Traditional owners maintain that their sovereignty has never been ceded, and Aboriginal Victorians have long called for treaty. La Trobe University Bundoora undertakes teaching, learning and research in the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. The university acknowledges Aboriginal people's ongoing connection to the land upon which its campuses are located and values the contributions Indigenous Australians make to its activities. From time immemorial, Victorian traditional leaders have practiced their laws, customs and languages and nurtured country through their spiritual, cultural, material and economic connections to the land, water and resources. Through the strength, resilience and pride of Aboriginal Victorians, their cultures, communities and economies endure and continue to grow and thrive today.
Thanks, Heath. And hi, everyone. Thanks for attending and thanks to Visible Body for allowing us to present our work. As mentioned, I'm Aaron McDonald. I'm a senior lecturer and the head of the anatomy discipline at La Trobe University.
And I'm Heath McGowan. I'm an anatomy lecturer. We've been using the Visible Body Atlas since 2019 when we introduced it into a second year anatomy subject. So in our presentation today, we want to share with you, sorry about my dog, I'll fix it in a sec. We'll share with you the project we developed to fully implement the Visible Body into our entire curriculum. We'd like to discuss our findings from this work, which it will include student perceptions and outcomes, as well as staff perceptions, which we also thought was a very important part of this study as well. We would like to recognise the hard work of our master's student, Melby Tentrasana, for analysing the data. And we'd like to demonstrate some ways we've been able to implement Visible Body into our online teaching. And we're happy for any questions throughout our chat, so feel free to speak up or post in the chat or raise your hand. So let's look at our, Aaron, are you still sharing? Yeah, all right. Let's look at our standard teaching environment. We teach in a blended format. This is a flipped classroom model. So it consists of interactive face-to-face lectures, and content is presented via video clips that staff create themselves. Students need to complete pre-practical activities at home and also the practical activities in their 2-hour weekly practice. They are asked to continue their studies outside of scheduled class times. And the problem here is that they have limited access to 3D resources outside their 2 hours of scheduled class per week.
Anatomy is a foundation discipline for multiple science and allied health students. It's delivered to about 4,000 students over first, second and third years. And in doing so, we use a number of resources. We can use textbooks, student manuals, models, skeletons, medical images, plastinated section and cadavers. So it sort of is a bit of a question as to why we would like to introduce something new, another resource such as digital technologies. So we've read a lot regarding the introduction of digital technologies into teaching. We wanted to make sure what we introduced would be taken up by students and not considered just a gimmick that isn't really valued. Visible Body was great because it provides visual information, either 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, text-based information and quizzes, etc. And it delivers information in a format for all learning styles. Developing spatial relationships is essential for learning anatomy. Using this 3D app helps students develop this skill, whereas the text and 2D images can't really do that. Students can also learn through scaffolding, from starting with bones. They can add then muscles and nerves and arteries. And this allows students to not become overwhelmed or suffer from cognitive overload. One of the major positives we found was accessibility. Students can access anywhere and manipulate the information to suit their learning style at their own pace. They can view three-dimensional structures, otherwise very difficult to see in other specimens, such as cadavers. For example, the bones of the middle ear. They can access this information at any time with ease, and they can be confident with the accuracy, more so than just using Google search, for instance.
Okay, so we wanted to analyse the effectiveness of introducing digital technologies into our teaching. So we got ethics approval. Our study had a number of aims. We wanted to evaluate the technology's impact on students' learning experience, so their perceptions. We wanted to quantify the effect on their student engagement and outcomes, so their actual marks. And we also wanted to evaluate the experience of the teachers teaching into the subject using these digital technologies.
The way we implemented Visible Body was firstly to develop a how-to guide for students and staff. We wrote specific pre-prac and practical activities, asking the students to refer to the visible body for information and images. So for example, in this view here, we might have asked students to identify the deltoid. So we can see here, this is the medial head of the deltoid. And we'd ask them where it is relative to the shoulder joint. We'd ask them to therefore describe the action, what it would produce as it's found lateral to the shoulder joint, therefore it'd be abduction. We'd then also ask them to identify the nerve innervating that muscle. So from our brachial plexus, we can see our auxiliary nerve is traveling through and innervating the deltoid. We also have a number of images in our manual. So for example, this is an image of the circle of Willis, and to me it looks a bit more like a squash spider on a bit of paper. So we've tried to get that image into 3 dimensions, and so we've asked the students to identify the circle of Willis using the Visible Body app, and obviously this can be rotated and manipulated for the students' ease of learning this less than easy 2-dimensional structure. And staff were also offered a volunteer training session prior to the start of semester.
Okay, so of the 101 students who responded to our survey, 89% of students used the app over the semester. Only 19% wanted to go back to using a textbook only. Here's some quotes from our students. It's very helpful. It's more interactive and better than a textbook. It's easy to use, it's portable, we can study anywhere, and it gives a 3D image, which is what we're after with accessibility. I love this one. Being able to see the muscle on my tablet for the first time was memorable. So it's having an impact, and it helps visualize anatomy. A significant decrease studies you've added to their workload, but we had the opposite.
And here we have some so another comment was that more features such as bony landmarks were required, and this definitely indicates that they need more training because this is already a resource or a feature in Visible Body. Some students requested that the quiz questions were more related to the actions of structures in addition to just identifying the structure. And a lot of the students indicated that they wanted Visible Body more incorporated into their practicals. And this was really important to us because it indicated to us that there was a different level of reinforcement by the staff during these practical sessions.
Okay, so looking at the nitty-gritty, the actual student results, what we saw was one of our practical tests we were able to keep identical between 2018 and 2019, and that content was the distal lower limb. And we saw a significant increase in student marks when they had access to visible body. The exact same thing occurred with their final end of semester exam, where students with access to visible body performed much better than the previous year. And we saw the exact same thing again with their final overall end of semester mark. So students with visible body performed much better. All right, so moving on to staff results. Participating staff were overall supportive of the inclusion of visible body into the curriculum. So you can see this quote, adding this to the repertoire is great. Adding digital technologies is a great thing. However, 3 key aspects need to be considered: staff communication, willingness, and staff technical ability.
So considering staff communication, we did need to express a clearer vision. We did have some comments such as, I doubt any technology will ever exceed or even match the anatomical specimens. They suggested that it was taking time away from actually using the specimens themselves. And they can see the app replacing the need for a textbook, but not the need for anatomical specimens. And this really has indicated to us that we had a poor communication on our part as our goals with relation to introducing visible body. We wanted their goals to be complementary to the conventional anatomical pedagogy, not there to replace any other resource. There are positives and limitations for all resources, so giving the students the options that complement their learning preference. There are cognitive overload issues. Some resources can have too much information and become overwhelming for students. We wanted students to consolidate complex anatomical concepts, which is enhanced through multiple resources, for example, scaffolding to form a complete overview. And we wanted to convert the anatomical learning environment from pedagogy to andragogy. So although students think that they learn more in a didactic teacher-led session, there's evidence to indicate that students who interact and problem solve perform better, even if they feel that they don't really do so. There are some comments regarding how we actually wanted the visible body to be used. Some indicated that I didn't find the app beneficial because I have an anatomical model or specimen. All our resources are not accessible outside of a short, generally 2-hour weekly practical session. So students needed to familiarise themselves with the visible body resource under instruction. The students who used it found it excellent. Again, teachers are role models and needed to encourage use in the class as well as doing the activities outside of the class. Continual use, so it is not a gimmick. Similarly, it needs to be used so it's not considered a gimmick, and successful implementation relies on staff.
You can see from these first 2 quotes, I'm a lot more comfortable with other techniques that I know work, and implementation comes down to the staff. Given that teachers are highly influential figures in the learning environment, lack of staff willingness, inconsistent use of digital tech would negatively influence the uptake of these resources such as visible body. Some teachers may feel disconcerted, anxious when they need to go outside of their comfort zone because staff generally prefer to teach using resources that they are already comfortable with. So we need to help staff identify that students learn in multiple ways, and the ways that they learn are constantly changing. Staff identified that they had various levels of technical abilities ranging from highly confident to not confident. Only 2 of the 9 staff in this subject had any experience using visible body prior to semester. Comments from how to get the most out of visible body were, it's important to get more helpful training, and a short video plus a written document would be great to basically fall back on. So Melby's been able to create a great instructional video and this communication piece as part of her master's project. All staff have had access to these resources for some time. Unfortunately, we still have staff who haven't read or watched these resources. So this really goes back to the staff willingness. And as course subject coordinators, we need to decide if these staff members are the right people to include in a modern subject.
And this is just a screenshot of Melby's educational, so visible body educational video for teachers. We can see that there's bookmarks created throughout, so staff can look at specific teaching techniques. So for example, scaffolding, how to say views, cross sections. So Melby's created all of these little resources to give a lot of information for staff teaching using the Visible Body app.
Okay, so 2020, enter the COVID. Student engagements. I guess having introduced Visible Body in 2019, we were actually ready to go fully online in lockdown. So things to be aware of when in a live virtual online space, the student has to be present. So they need to respond to questions. We need to ask them to annotate or share their own screen so they're actually engaged. As a benefit, we're still able to provide instant feedback, and structures can be readily labeled. A benefit is that students access the same resources as they are taught with. So even though we didn't have cadaveric materials, students had access to these resources, and students can use this same experience to study with their peers.
When we first started teaching online, staff used different methods to try to get across their teaching. Some were trying to draw on physical whiteboards where we had issues with lighting and camera. It's two-dimensional, it's time-consuming. So we can see this, someone's tried to draw the blood vessels into the in the skull. It's taken about 3 minutes to get to this stage. So it does take a bit of time. There are physical models. So some staff took physical models at home and were trying to, excuse me, use those to point out structures when putting it close to the camera. As you can see, this is a bit of a mock-up of Heath trying to teach using the bones of the foot, and it gets a little bit out of focus. And also text images may be too complicated or too detailed if you're sharing the screen. So Heath and I just want to do a really quick sort of example of how we did implement Visible Body into our teaching. So for starters, I'll be screen sharing my Visible Body app. And here I'll just be showing the blood vessels, sort of pretty much the same view as that one where a person was trying to draw it in the whiteboard. And we can see here, we've got the image that we're after straight away. We didn't need to take that time to draw it, but we can zoom in, we can zoom out. Obviously we can alter the view so the students get a better three-dimensional visual representation that they can put into their brain, I guess. We can identify specific landmarks or specific structures. Here we can see how it's blood vessels traveling from the neck region and traveling into the head, and then we can zoom in. And so we can see a lot more interaction between the structures here than just drawing it on the whiteboard. And Heath will just show a quick example of the foot.
Okay, so very similarly, you can see that I was pretending to hold up a foot model to the camera. Here it is, shared on the Visible Body app. I know we're preaching to the converted because everyone here's a user, but you can see that it's rotatable, and I can select different bones, and we have a textbook function. The students don't need to go to multiple sources. With one click, I can add muscles. I don't need to reach for a different model, and I can select a muscle and instantly see its action. So we actually have, staff that are standing in front of a camera trying to demonstrate these movements, on a little webcam. And, this leads to us being able to ask the students to annotate which muscles are present and, what actions are being undertaken. They can also add blood vessels and things like that.
So we could ask a student as it's going along, so we can ask them, well, what muscle is this? And then they could label it. They can annotate, well, there's plantar flexion, so it's producing movement at the ankle joint, which is, and then Heath could move this image around. So we can see the ankle joint, we can zoom in on the ankle joint and see the structure of the ankle joint. So it's a really interactive, and it definitely, the main part here is actually getting the students to answer questions instead of us just basically showing them information. We can show them an image and ask them, you know, what blood vessels will travel through the tarsal tunnel, things like that. So it's a really interactive resource. Okay, I'll just share screen again. Sorry, everyone, 2 seconds.
Let's take a sec.
So while you switch screens, we do have a couple of questions for you in the chat.
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the first questions is, are these comments from the 19% that wanted to go back to the text?
That's a good question. All the comments were completely anonymous. It was an anonymous online survey. So I imagine negative comments are from the, 12% of people who said they didn't use it and wanted to go back to a textbook.
Awesome.
Heath, can you just stop sharing, please, and I'll be able to jump on.
The other question is whether students who responded to the survey health science students. This subject in particular was a mix of exercise physiology, health science, and biomedicine students.
Okay. And so we found that the best approach for our online teaching was using visible body, because it allowed us three-dimensional, rotatable, dissectable images. Okay,
so we looked at, Melby's video for teachers, teaching staff. She has also made informative instructional videos for students. They said they wanted more instruction too. So here we have learning the importance of surface anatomy with annotations. Melby's also used the augmented reality to be able to bring our practical manual images to life in 3D. And finally, she's given a resource on how to compare our plastinated section database with the sections that are available in the visible body collection. Looking forward, I hate that expression, but we're looking at introducing courseware with the aim to share with the other disciplines so students can use visible body throughout their course. Most of our students study pathology and physiology as well, and some also study biology and microbiology, and they can use courseware to access more than one topic or subject material. So this will be our new project, learning courseware and motivating other staff in other departments in their disciplines. And we already have very interested staff in physiology and microbiology. So watch this space.
So thank you very much for listening. And we do want to say a special thanks to our master's student, Melby, for her great work in this field. And do we have any questions? And I'll stop sharing screen now.
Yes.
Yeah, we do have a few. Sorry, Kara, if you wanted to.
Nope, go right ahead.
We did have a second part to Tracy's question about the different types of students who were involved in this. Did these students look at wet specimens in practicals?
Yes. So generally our 2-hour pracs were broken up into an hour in a dry lab, which contains, plastinated sections. We had a virtual reality. We were running a trial at the same time. We had our augmented reality. We had models. The other hour was fully immersed in wet cadaveric prosections.
And it was also great, actually, the staff still brought their tablets to the wet lab, so with the cadaveric specimens, and to help, like we said with scaffolding, you could walk into a cadaveric specimen and it has a whole bunch of structures that you need to identify. We can identify some, but we can also remove a lot of the information using the visible body app, so students can compare that to the cadavers that they're looking at. The other thing we love, because then we're relating that information to the cadavers and to the models. So when the students can take this resource home and study by themselves, they've got that visual of comparing it to a cadaver or a model.
That's awesome.
Another question was, did we have any alternative activities or resources for students with disabilities, visual, technological, or otherwise? I know, but we do have, Trobe has its own disability support liaison service that gets in touch with any teachers that have students coming through with any disabilities, and we arrange a learning access plan and alternative resources for those students to make sure they get the best experience they can get as well.
Yeah, so we can include closed captions with our video clips and all of those. Yep, so definitely interacting with the equity diversity team and we have, as you saw, there's over 4,000 students, so we have quite a diverse array of students. And yeah, we sort of try to cater as much as we can for everyone.
All right, next question. I'm not very tech savvy and it seems very overwhelming for me. How do you even get started to learn the program well enough to teach it? Did you start with your first topic and look through the app to see what you can use? Aaron, you're not very tech savvy, so I'll give you that one for starters.
I can answer that. Yeah, I'm very not tech savvy at all. Heath's our IT guru, so anything tech I asked him, but it's really quite a simple process. Once you learn to screen share, you're literally just manipulating the image. There's a couple of little I guess tricks to help you isolate structures specifically, as opposed to having too much overwhelming information. But it'll take you an hour to play around. Now I'm making video clips to help the students, and I'm using the visible body resource. So instead of just using images from textbooks or things like that, I'm actually recording the visible body while I manipulate it and help that for the students as well. So definitely not as overwhelming as it seems.
Yeah, I think the big thing is you can't break it. Don't be afraid to press buttons. You got, colorful buttons in the corner. You press that and suddenly all your bony landmarks are there with, then you press the red little button. It looks like a hammer and it's got all the muscle attachment sites, so you can add muscles one by one. Yeah, just press buttons and see what you get. If you go down the bottom, you can always just press menu and go back to the start and reset everything.
I did, I might share screen again if that's all right with everyone. And whoops, not that one. Just to show, we did identify, especially when we're teaching online, that it's great that the visible body has an annotate button, so how to draw, which is really, really helpful for students to create screenshots and create their own information. But what we did find that when we're teaching online, it is better for people to use the annotate button through the Zoom link. So if I asked Heath, I'd say, okay, Heath, can you identify the frontal bone for me? Can you just draw F on the bone? And he'll be able to quickly annotate like that. So we found that this was something that we slowly learnt what was easier to access and to get the students involved. Instead of me just drawing stuff using the visible body app, we can actually get the students interacting, and we could ask them to move it around. The best thing is we actually get the students to share screen. So we're really not doing much teaching ourselves. So if you are, I guess, not very tech savvy, mess around basically. But then if you reinforce the students to be using it, they'll actually jump in and they'll be sharing the screens more than you. So you can pretty much just guide them along.
The next question is, yeah. You want to go on?
Yep. What are we looking at? So
I think outside of visible bodies depth of resources for body systems, did you make use of visible body for earlier subjects such as first year subjects, introduction to anatomy and physiology, chemistry, chemical cells, tissues outside of just the text? We're going to say no, we haven't made it available for first year simply because we have another 2,000 students in first year who don't go on, well, half of them, 1,000 of those ish, 1,500, don't go on into second year. And so it's just a licensing issue. We'd have to pay for licenses for another 1,500 students. And it's just, you know, they'll only use it once, and we'll focus our attention on the students who need it.
The main idea is first year anatomy is very basic information. So it's just the basic. This visible body app has way more information that's required from first year. So we find again that if the students were accessing it, that it'd become too overwhelming for them. So we just want them the basics in first year. When they move on into second year, they have access to this resource and they can just download it from the library using the Trobe Wi-Fi, and then that's how we can actually use the resource.
Yeah, courseware actually has you know, a biology component which might be more accessible to first year students, but we haven't spent a lot of time with that.
But we are, yeah. So we've been speaking with physiology staff and microbiology staff, and they're really interested in these extra apps. So they want to introduce it. We just need to find a bit of time to, I guess, teach them how to use this resource as well.
Okay, in the slide showing a human partially covered by a virtual reality or augmented reality specimen, is the movement of the AR coordinated with the human in the background? No, that's it comes with practice. You know, the movement of the model happens automatically, and you just learn, you know, when we're filming, Aaron might say, and extend. And so we time it, but it would be good to have it recognize, you know, movements and follow them. But at the moment, no, it doesn't.
But the best part, I guess, here is it is allowing students to create muscle memory. So if we are showing or augmented reality of a muscle producing a movement and the students are performing that movement, hopefully they can realize that that's flexion, the muscles that are moving, they can visualize that. And this is creating muscle memory, plus a good, you know, a way to remember those movements and that muscle and where it's running relative to the joints.
Okay, staff we referred to in our presentation, are they permanent staff like ourselves or casuals or both? So were they paid to watch the videos? Generally, we had 9 staff teaching into this subject. 8 of those were permanent staff, I believe, and 1 casual. So well, he was part casual, you know, had a 50-50 workload. So no, we weren't paid extra to watch the videos, but we did have a training session. It was voluntary, but most of the staff actually attended that. Want to add anything, Aaron?
No, that's it basically. But a lot of the, we do have a lot of casuals. We also run what we call a science hub, which is we have tutors teaching any student who are interested. We basically pay them some money to come in, and all of the tutors are using this the Visible Body app to help teach. So anyone who's coming in are basically developing these skills, and I suppose COVID was a big motivator in using this for Zoom or, you know, online teaching. Are the materials we've developed available? What we have done is we run our subjects through manuals, and they have learning objectives, and then we have specific activities for the practicals. What we wanted to do was keep that format, but instead of here's a table, look it up in a textbook, we just changed it to say using the visible body, identify, you know, the origin, the insertion, the action, things like that, but using the visible body. We also created activities such as identify the ligament, describe where it is relative to the joint, and therefore describe the function. So we wanted them to look at the images and then try to use common sense to figure out the function of those structures. So yeah, and I think courseware, again, we're slowly getting into that, and I think there's lots of activities through courseware. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, so we have a page dedicated specifically to courseware courses and labs and activities that can be accessed on our site. If you don't have a courseware account, you can get a trial one to kind of poke around and see if any of those struck your fancy, or you can absolutely work with your rep who will help you build a course that is, you know, going to work the best for you. So that could be one that correlates to whatever textbook you're using, or if you wanted to build it from, you know, the ground up. We are here to help you with that. But we also have tons of lab activities. We have augmented lab activities, augmented reality lab activities, that is, and lesson plans that are all completely free on our website. If you just go to our resources page, which I am going to pop into the chat right now.
And yeah, that's definitely our goal, is taking this to courseware, trying to implement it a bit more. And the biggest part is getting the interaction from the students and the staff. And once they realize it's such a great resource, then we can add it to physiology and biochemistry, biology, things like that. And then the students will be using it throughout multiple subjects or courses. So it becomes basically ingrained into their teaching or into their learning environment. So yeah. I think someone put VR versus or not AR, not VR, and definitely that's the case. It's augmented reality. We have used a bit of virtual reality in our teaching as well, and that was a little bit another part of our study. We introduced some virtual reality as well. So yeah, so with
problem with virtual reality, nothing wrong with it. It's fun, it's educational, it's interactive. It's just not accessible. You know, you still have to be on campus to use it. So it's not bringing the 3D structures home or on the bus or on the tram or whatever.
And again, that's the whole concept of more resources, the better. And you know, just trying to get across to those staff teaching that we're not replacing anything. We constantly get questions, I guess, from higher up saying, well, so does that mean that you can teach without cadavers? Because obviously that would be saving money. But using cadavers is a great resource. It's one of the best experiences students can learn with, but obviously we hope that they don't have any of those at home. So they can't use these resources, and we can't staff the cadaveric labs, you know, non-stop. So having something that they can access with 3 dimensions to manipulate at their own pace, learn at their own style, is really helpful to consolidate or work with the cadavers and the models, etc. Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
I think.
And feel free, if you're a slow typer, to use the raised hand function, and I can unmute you. Here we go. All right, Robert.
Hi, Robert.
Hold on. Robert, you need to unmute yourself.
There you go.
There you go.
Just a quick question. We're very new to this. We just put this on our Moodle system itself today, where we will be. And we got your free trial, and we want to be able to use to begin to use the classroom and everything else too. So we're kind of a novice in this area, so we're just getting started, but bear with us. Yeah. And obviously these chats and things like that, we can learn a lot more about it too during these chats.
Yes, and we offer tons of training. So if you ever wanted to sit down with our team, our support team or our engagement team would be so happy to give you a crash course if you wanted.
And how do we get a hold of them?
You could reach out. You could reach out to your rep, or
Okay.
If you want, I can pass your information to our customer engagement team, and they
Could
can.
you please? Yeah.
Perfect. If you could privately message me your email address,
I would be glad to do that.
that would be great. I will pass that along and they will set up a time with you.
Great.
And Robert, that's definitely really important, is to make sure it's the students are fully engaged and the staff are fully engaged. Otherwise, it becomes just a gimmick that they don't really use. And lots of people have bought, massive $100,000 digital things, and basically that, I've heard stories of massive anatomy tables that are, look really great, but if they're not immersed into the teaching environment, the students don't use it, the staff don't use it, and basically they end up as, I don't know, table tennis tables or things like that. So really, if you want to invest, it's a really great resource, but it does need to be implemented, really fully immersed into the subject, so the students are using it all the time. That was the biggest thing we found. And obviously, as you saw through the comments, even though we felt that we'd got that across to the staff, we don't think we did. So we needed to really reinforce that again this year as well.
But I think we found it's actually a really inexpensive tool as well. Our licensing fee is very inexpensive per student. So I think everyone's pretty happy with that.
Yep.
Awesome. And thank you, Robert, for giving me your email address. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
That's it.
We can absolutely end this early. I know it's very early in the morning for you guys out there.
That's all right. Thanks. Yeah. Happy to chat. And
40. I was going to say it's a balmy 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Not too bad.
But yeah, we're definitely, thanks for coming all the way from Australia. Our pleasure. We're happy to be contacted. This was a bit of a study. We'll continue on with this study. After implementing it, we're going to be asking the staff again, did they like the new, they wanted resources, we've created it. We'll ask them again to see how they've liked it, and especially with the new COVID. Hopefully the skills have really been ramped, and we'll be checking in with the students again to see this next. So it's an iterative process when you're doing your teaching, any changes to the curriculum, and so we want to keep building on that. So we're happy to chat with anyone who's around. They're happy for them to email us and get into contact. It'd be great to chat with like-minded people.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I guess we could end it a few minutes early. So Aaron, Heath, this was so good. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your results of this. Oh, actually, we have a last minute question. Did any students complain about internet connection problems?
I'll take that one because it's tech-based, Aaron.
Yep.
So our license allows students to access, download the visible body software when on campus, and they then get it for 150 days. So really, they only need to show up to campus twice a year. What happened was that with the onset of COVID, so after our study, last year with the onset of COVID, when we weren't able to go on campus pretty much at all for the entire year, students had to log in via a VPN, and students had a lot of issues with that. I made videos, I made spreadsheet, PowerPoints on how to do it step by step. Students found it difficult to follow instructions. So it was a fair bit of time one-on-one Zooming students with them sharing screen and walking them through it. So that might be a little bit of, you might need to be a little bit more tech savvy than some of your students in that case. But yeah, if students had problems, I was happy to help them. Nobody complained that we were unable to help.
Yeah, basically everyone's got the internet. Sometimes the cameras went down, but you just tell them to close cameras off. So this is when we're teaching online. But yeah, using the resource, because they can download it onto an app, They don't need the Wi-Fi internet. Cool.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you so much, everyone.
This is wonderful. All right, so I will be sending this recording out tomorrow morning, along with a couple of follow-up things, including Aaron and Heath's emails, which is so nice of you guys to share those with us. And I think the AFL is the Australian Football League. I know nothing about soccer, so I am handing that off to you guys.
Sorry.
Collingwood, but that's very contentious. I think my team.
You got too many teeth for that, Aaron.
Yes. Yeah, Magpies, Collingwood Pies. Yep, that's it.
I'm a tiger. You probably saw all my cats walking around, walking on keyboards.
Yeah, it looked really sweet. My cat's sleeping on the couch right now.
You can probably hear my fat cat snoring.
All righty. Well, okay, everybody look out for that email tomorrow. And Heath and Aaron, thank you